Our value this morning is environmental sustainability. We care for our earth home with mindfulness and responsibility for ourselves and for future generations. I just wanted to say a few things that came to mind already. Rod, thank you for your poem about the soil. I think one thing that I'm really grateful for about this area where we live is the softness of the soil and how it's a really good place to go barefoot. I've lived a lot of places where it's hard to do that, and it's one thing I'm so grateful here, that you can really put your feet on the soft soil and feel that support from the earth. So thank you for your poem. And I also, when we were reading the opening words by Robin Kimmerer about the goldenrod and purple aster, I just wanted to say a little word about that. I'll talk about her further in the talk, but she is a environmental biologist and a professor. And when she was applying for school to study science, they said, why do you want to go into science? And she said, I'm so amazed by the beauty of the natural world, and that's what inspires me to go into science. And she was told that, well, could she be more specific? Because that wasn't really usually why most people went into science. And she said, I want to know why the goldenrod and the purple aster always grow together in nature. They're so beautiful, and they're so beautiful together. And why is that? And she said, they didn't know. But that became one of her inquiries in science. And what she found was they are opposites on the color wheel, opposite colors, the gold and the purple, and that they grow together because they can attract the widest range of pollinators. And so there's this incredible meaning in that beauty that she pursues as a scientist. So I just wanted to share that about the opening words about the goldenrod and the aster. And wanted to acknowledge that this week our country celebrated a National Day of Thanksgiving. And for many of us, we may have had a little anticipation, anxiety going into it. It may have been a little more challenging this year than others. NPR did some stories leading up to Thanksgiving about how people were navigating the post-election family gatherings this season. And some were establishing ground rules that politics would be off bounds and not discussed. Others said they were avoiding gatherings altogether for a little while. And others reported that family is a source of support. And so there was a range of feelings. For some of us, this was a first Thanksgiving without the physical presence of a loved one. Just wanted to acknowledge that. And for this C3 community, that is certainly true. And I just wanted to take a moment to give thanks for the blessings of the members of this community that have passed away this year, that have graced our lives, that have knitted us together, that have showered us with such gifts, who have challenged us and taught us what it means to love, to be mortal, to live well, to let go, to accompany each other and to be community, to build bridges and to find our wings. So for them, we are deeply grateful. And I wanted to just acknowledge that for many indigenous people in this country, November 24th this year was the 47th annual day, National Day of Mourning for them. And it's a day of observance and fasting and remembrance. And this year it was dedicated to the water protectors around the world, and especially at Standing Rock. And to the ongoing history that we're still working out about taking the lives and land and of calling the earth an it. So wherever we may have found ourselves on this National Day of Thanksgiving this year, I also wanted to acknowledge that for many, we're still in that process of assimilating the election results, that this is a process, it continues, as we receive new information about appointments and plans for the new president-elect's first 100 days in office. So just affirming that this process of assimilation continues. And I wanted to just remind us to be compassionate with ourselves, to continue to be mindful and aware of what we're experiencing, to stay with ourselves and seek out what is supportive. As we talked a couple weeks ago, it might be time to journal, to walk in nature, to wear safety pins and be around, seek out people who have safety pins, to attend peace vigils, Million Woman marches. For me, Saturday Night Live has been really helpful and supportive. I watch it a lot. It's important to tend and befriend. It may be time to join the writing group at C3 or the book club or quiz night. It might be time to get involved in a committee or the leadership of C3 and to help live out and carry forward the values and mission of this community. And what I'd like to talk about this morning is gratitude, reciprocity, and care for our earth home. Because this week I found myself very supported and so grateful for the teachings of a Mohawk teacher, Chief Jake Swamp, who I had the opportunity to meet when I was working with the Quakers in Philadelphia. And he was doing tree planting ceremonies as part of his teaching on the culture of peace. And he taught that the starting place is always gratitude, and that the practice of giving thanks and gratitude is at the center of caring for our earth home. And in his tradition, the Haudenosaunee Thanksgiving address is a prayer of greeting and gratitude that reads like a love poem. And it's called The Words That Come Before All Else. And it's composed of these beautiful words of love and gratitude for the special gifts received from every part of the natural world. So words of gratitude are spoken in this address to the people, to the earth mother, to the waters, to the fish, to the plants, to the food plants, to the medicine plants, to the animals, the trees, the birds, to the four winds, to the thunderers, the sun, to Grandmother Moon, to the stars, to the wisdom keepers, to Creator, and words are also spoken to any who may have been inadvertently forgotten. And these words that come before all else are always spoken at meetings and councils and before decisions are made. And they are spoken at the open and the close of each and every day. So the last reading that Chris read for us was from this Thanksgiving address, and they were the words that are dedicated to Mother Earth. And I'm going to talk a little bit about water today, so I wanted to also just read the words that are the greeting to the water from this Thanksgiving address of the Haudenosaunee. It says, "We give thanks to all the waters of the world for quenching our thirst and providing us with strength. Water is life. We know its power in many forms, waterfalls and rain, mists and streams, rivers, lakes, oceans. And with one mind, we send our greeting and our thanks to the Spirit of water." So Chief Jake made this Thanksgiving address into a children's book, a really beautiful book for children. And it was his belief that if the children have this spirit of gratitude in them, that things will start to turn around. This was part of his teaching. So as we move towards the holidays, I just wanted to mention his book as you think about gifts for the children. This book is called Giving Thanks. And this week I was also supported by and so grateful for the teachings of Dr. Robin Krimmerer. And I'm grateful to Wayne Johnson, who I think is downstairs taking care of the children in a good way. Wayne introduced me to her work recently. And she's a scientist, as I said, a botanist, a writer, a distinguished professor of environmental biology, and the director of the Center for Native Peoples and the Environment. And Dr. Krimmerer also tells us that our first responsibility is gratitude for the gifts that we are showered with every day from the earth, gifts that we have neither earned nor paid for. She says gratitude is the most potent offering we possess. And she reminds us that the natural world is always teaching us that gifts come with responsibility, and that a gift is to be used for the benefit of all, that there is a responsibility to give back. This is her writing. She says, a thrush is given the gift of song and has a responsibility to greet the day with music, which in turn is received as gift to us as we watch the sky grow pink with dawn. And the salmon have the gift of travel, so they accept the responsibility of carrying food upriver. And the stars were given the gift of sparkle, coupled with responsibility of guiding us at night. And these are the words of a scientist. From this edge of science that wraps back around to meet and acknowledge what indigenous spirituality has been saying all along. And she reminds us that for the earth to stay in balance, for the gifts to continue to flow, we must give back in equal measure. And she calls this a covenant of reciprocity. And she writes, this is not just good manners. It is how the biophysical world works. We must understand that we must play by the same rules that govern ecosystem function. Unlimited growth is not possible. In a finite world, you cannot relentlessly take without giving back. And our Western industrial economic growth paradigm insists on this. Unlimited growth and expansion. It takes without love, without giving back, calling the earth an it, using and consuming her strength, as Cherokee poet Mary Lou Awiakta tells us. And it has broken rules that govern ecosystem function, and it has brought us to a time of climate crisis that Indigenous people and environmental and spiritual teachers say requires a great turning and evolutionary shift from unsustainable, consumption-driven societies towards cultures of gratitude, reciprocity, and care for our earth home. In Nicaragua, I lived in one region for a period of time that's very dry, and water can be very, very scarce. So people are careful to take only what's needed. They use restraint, and they give back by reforesting watersheds, which can be very taxing because you have to carry water to trees and seedlings to nurture them through the dry season. And you can see this culture of giving back and respect and gratitude in the way they care for the water, in the way they wash their hands or a dish or a baby, carefully cradling each handful of water. And you can hear it in their speech. When they arrive at your house after a long, hot journey, they will say, "Regálame agüita, por favor." It means, please gift me with some dear water, a little bit of dear water. That's how it's asked for. Leslie made me cry. And my friend Dana Frank, who's a professor of the labor movement at the University of California, she called me last week and she said, I've got to talk to this high school class for 2 hours about Honduras. What am I going to say? And I said, tell stories. Tell your stories. And so she called me when she got done and she said, oh, it went so well. It was fantastic. And I said, well, tell me, how did it go? What did you tell them? And she said, well, they asked me, they said, how did you get started in all of this, Dr. Frank? And she said, I told the story that I went to Honduras to research banana workers in the banana plantations. And I said to the union, I don't want to live in an apartment and pay rent for an apartment. I want to live with a banana worker family. I want to live with the people on the plantations. And I'll give the money that I would spend renting an apartment to the family when I'm done. And so they made that arrangement and they put her with a family. And so she lived and she did all her research with this family. And when it was time for her to go, she went and she said, here's the money that I would have used for an apartment. Thank you for having me and hosting me and feeding with me and living with me. And they said, well, Dana, we've talked about it and we don't want your money. And they said, we want you to be part of our family. And she said, well, I would love to be part of your family, but also I'm rich. I have resources compared to you, and you are poorer, and I would like you to have this money. And they said, no, Dana, they said, we're rich too. And she said the high school students were so moved by this, and that she in turn was moved by the fact that they were moved by that, and that everyone felt so supported by that story of a culture of reciprocity and mutual giving, rooted in taking only what is needed, in contentment, enoughness, and gratitude. So Dr. Kimmerer echoes what many in South America that I have been working with says. She raises the question that our current understanding of sustainability may not be big enough and may be a cop-out. And she writes, at heart, sustainability, as we currently understand it, is often embedded in a worldview that we as human beings have ownership over what we call resources, and that a human being can continue to take and consume far into the future. But reciprocity is different, she writes. Reciprocity says that not only does the earth sustain us, but that we have the capacity and the responsibility to sustain her in return. It broadens the notion of what it means to be a human person, not just a consumer, but also a giver. And it is about mutual flourishing. So about 6 years ago, Tom and I were in Cochabamba, Bolivia, at a gathering of over 30,000 indigenous and non-indigenous from around the world. And this was a huge gathering about climate change and the rights of Mother Earth. And from that gathering came a mandate to call on the United Nations to adopt a universal declaration for the rights of Mother Earth. And it applies the concept of the UN human rights framework to the earth as a living being with inherent and inalienable rights, and it establishes that human beings, states, public and private institutions have obligations to uphold and to protect her rights as a living being. In 1948, the UN Universal Declaration of Human Rights emerged from the catastrophe of World War II. And thanks to the leadership of Bolivia and countries from the South, and Bolivia with its first indigenous president, today the UN system is in a conversation about the rights of Mother Earth. And that has emerged from the catastrophe of a worldview and an economic paradigm of unlimited exploitation, of taking, misnamed as growth, that has produced climate chaos. And the Rights of Mother Earth Declaration is about promoting the pursuit of human well-being in a manner that maintains and enhances the integrity, balance, and health of Mother Earth instead of undermining it. That's the objective. And I'll just read a few lines from Article 2 that says, Mother Earth and all beings of which she is composed have the following inherent and inalienable rights: the right to life and to exist, the right to be respected, the right to continue vital cycles and processes free from human disruption, the right to maintain identity and integrity as a self-regulating and interrelated being, and that each being has the right and a place to play in its role in Mother Earth and her harmonious functioning, and that every human being is responsible for respecting and living in harmony with Mother Earth. That's from the Declaration. And this declaration was introduced to the United Nations by Bolivia. It's been incorporated into the Constitution of Ecuador. It's being used by indigenous communities to assign personhood to rivers and forests, to protect them from destruction. And it is already building legal precedent and jurisprudence around Mother Earth as a being with rights. And it's part of this evolutionary shift and this great turning towards a paradigm of gratitude, reciprocity, and mutual flourishing that Dr. Kimmerer and many others are speaking of. When we were in Bolivia 6 years ago, people were already pointing to the Andes, to the way the glacier line was receding, and they were scared. They said they'd never seen that much mountain exposed before. And they said, this is climate change. And this week, Bolivia declared a state of emergency from lack of water, because as the glaciers have disappeared, with them goes the meltwater that millions have relied on for drinking water forever. So again, I found myself this week supported and grateful for Dr. Kimmerer's words. She says, we can't have an awareness of the beauty of our world without also a tremendous awareness of the wounds. We see old-growth forest, and we also see the clear-cut. We see beautiful mountain, and we also see mountaintop removal. We must continue to learn about the transformation of love to grief to even stronger love. And so this week, as President-elect Trump talked in a videotaped speech without reporters about eliminating environmental protections to clear the way for creating millions of high-paying jobs in coal and shale, I found myself practicing this transformation of love to grief to even stronger love. And I found myself so grateful for the efforts of earth rights defenders and water protectors on the front lines and holding actions around the world, courageously caring for our earth home. Standing Rock this week, we saw hundreds injured as the police attacked with mace and water cannons in freezing temperatures, firing rubber bullets, resulting in hundreds of injuries. And especially take a moment to remember a young woman named Sophie, whose arm was destroyed by a concussion grenade. And we hear word that they are being pressured to be evicted from their campsite. And so we practice this transformation of love to grief and even stronger love. A few months ago, my friend Tupac, who I was also with in Bolivia 6 years ago, traveled from Standing Rock to Honduras. And he was representing a hemispheric-wide commission of indigenous organizations. And he went to meet with Berta's organization regarding commitments that they had made with her about the rights of Mother Earth. And this week he sent a photograph of him at a protest for Standing Rock. And he's surrounded in the sea of people, and he's holding a sign with Berta's picture that says, Berta Cáceres presente, one water, one world. And I practiced again and practiced this transformation of love to grief and even stronger love. And I am so grateful for so many that are living their lives in a way that the earth will be grateful for us. My friend David, who was here a few weeks ago, he asks me, can we also find gratitude for what challenges us, facing what evolves in our lives with courage, openness, clarity of values, honesty, and integrity? And he asked me this as I struggled to do that this morning. Because in recent weeks, I've shared with the leadership support team and with the board of trustees that as this year comes to a close, what has evolved in me is a growing recognition that I'm not able to effectively balance my work and responsibilities between two worlds that I cherish very much, between this community, C3, and my support of human rights defenders in Central America that continues to present itself in the most unforeseen ways. I realize as I come to this year's end that I did not anticipate the murder of my friend Berta or the implications for human rights and earth rights. And I didn't anticipate when I went to DC in April to accompany human rights defenders that of the 4 women that I was with, one of them's son would be murdered a few weeks ago, and that my other friend, Berta Oliva, whose daughter Marcela was with me this summer, would come under major attack in a pattern very similar to that which preceded Berta's murder. And so I am aware that I'm not able to hold all of it and be effectively present to both. And aware that I must face this with openness, honesty, and integrity, and that I must let go of this most amazing gift that has been showered on me this year, which is the privilege of working with you as a teacher and a leader. And so I have told the board that I'm unable to continue next year in this position, that I need to give back this amazing gift that you have given me. And I want to say thank you, that I am so deeply grateful for this year and for the gift of working with you, learning about your lives and journey, for the heartfelt conversations, for how we have learned and played and grieved and accompanied each other through so many transitions and grown and danced. And it is hard to speak these words, and I have practiced the transformation of love to grief and even stronger love. Because this community is a gift. It's a reason I can stay in this country and in this Western Michigan, where I will continue to work for human rights and earth rights, and I hope I can come back and share the journey along the way as we continue to shift paradigms, to show up for and lend our weight to this great turning, this challenge of our times, which is ever more pressing. And as I've shared this evolving understanding and decision with the leadership support team and with the board, some of the first responses have been, oh no, what are we going to do now? And then very soon after sitting with it, I've seen the resilience. We know how to do this. We can do this. We are good at this. And you do, and you are. You are leaders, and you are creating a new paradigm of leadership. And don't underestimate your gifts. So I ask you this morning to join me in working with my friend's question. Can we also find gratitude for what challenges us, facing what evolves in our lives with courage, openness, clarity of values, honesty, and integrity, practicing the transformation of love to grief to even stronger love, making our values and mission and dreams come alive, and finding a way to live in gratitude and reciprocity and live in a way that the earth will be so grateful for us. Thank you.